They thought I was finished, that losing my job meant losing my value. What they didn't see coming was that I was about to become the headline they'd all pretend not to read, but wouldn't be able to ignore. Family dinners at the Whitmore estate in Charleston were never about bonding. They were showrooms for career accolades, framed diplomas, and luxury cars parked just so in the circular drive. My name is Julian Cross. I'm 38 now. 3 months ago, I was lead architect for neural security at Syndralytics, a fast-rising AI firm on the East Coast. Now, I was the family's living cautionary tale. The black sheep shuffled to the far end of the table while everyone else toasted raises and acquisitions. Did you hear about Julian? Poor guy. Brilliant once, I suppose. I stood by the koi pond, listening to my cousin Paige brag about her VC fund's latest biotech exit, while her brother Grant mused about Web3 restructuring. They adored disruption, as long as it came with press clippings and perfectly tailored suits. Julian, Grant called, lifting his bourbon. Talking career pivots. Care to weigh in? The jab didn't sting, because while Grant managed investors and Paige flipped companies, I'd been quietly building something far more powerful and volatile. How's the job hunt? Paige asked, swirling her Cabernet. I glanced at my phone. 7:03 p.m. Eastern. About now, Syndralytics servers were initiating the update I'd left buried deep in the architecture. A truth protocol designed to make the SEC salivate. Real success, Grant added, is about vision. I nodded. Exactly. And mine's just about to make headlines. Let them laugh. The code had already launched. All eyes turned, waiting for me to flinch. I checked my phone again. 7:04 p.m. Let me tell you what really happened at Syndralytics. 4 years ago, I began a side project. Not another app for everything or some token-chasing crypto toy, but an adaptive AI security platform built to learn, defend, and evolve in real time. I called it Scepter. While my colleagues chased UX awards and pitched investors on whatever was trendy that quarter, I worked quietly. Line by line, I designed an AI that didn't just defend. It learned, adjusted, and preempted attacks like a living organism. Something relentless. Something undeniable. But I wasn't naive. I'd seen what happened to developers who built in the open. Their code stolen, their names erased, their ideas bought and buried. So I buried something too. A self-verifying cryptographic watermark, invisible unless triggered by very specific system changes. 2 months ago, Syndralytics appointed a new CEO, Nolan Pierce. He summoned me to his 23rd floor corner office overlooking Charleston Harbor. Julian, he began, already halfway through his espresso. The board's pivoting. We want wellness-driven AI now. Scepter's being phased out. I tried to speak, he waved it off. Already licensed the source, contract's done. You're being released. I signed the release, quietly, let them think they'd buried me. But Scepter wasn't sleeping, it was watching. And tonight, at 7:05 p.m. Eastern, as their systems processed a routine update, it would awaken. And make the truth undeniable. You should have gone into consulting, Grant jeered from the patio, smug behind his glass of bourbon. I smiled as my phone buzzed. Breaking. Former Syndralytics engineer linked to AI security bombshell. Paige arched an eyebrow. Offer from LinkedIn? Not quite, I replied. Evan chuckled. Hope you like washing dishes. I looked up, calm. Better set a place for me then. 7:05 p.m. Eastern Time. Scepter was live. Somewhere in downtown Charleston, inside Syndralytics' mirrored glass headquarters, Nolan Pierce was likely rehearsing his Monday morning press briefing, the one where he'd claim full credit for Scepter, their flagship innovation pivot. Same Nolan who once told me, engineers build tools, executives build futures. The same Nolan who sold off my creation with the confidence of a man who believed signatures outweighed substance. The same Nolan who, in less than a minute, would discover what happens when you silence the wrong engineer. Actually, I said, raising my voice above the jazz spilling from the terrace speakers, maybe everyone should check their phones. Grant chuckled. Paige rolled her eyes. At the fire pit, our youngest cousin, Drew, 26, fresh off a startup accelerator and full of himself, smirked. What is this, some dramatic app drop? I didn't reply. I just glanced at my screen. 7:06 p.m. My phone buzzed. Then Paige's. Then Grant's. One after another, the patio lit up with notifications, vibrating in hands and flickering across glass. Androlytic stock halted amidst AII EP scandal. Grant's grin twitched. Paige's glass slipped, wine sloshing. Drew sat forward. What the hell is going on? I sipped my drink slowly, savoring it. Oh, nothing major, I said, just a routine system update with enhancements. More headlines followed. $1,300,000,000, 0 cents, defense contract frozen, pending review. Former developer files, ownership claim over revolutionary AI system. Drew's voice cracked. Julian, what did you do? I set my glass down. Then I reached under the table and pulled out my old laptop. Its stickers faded, its screen scratched, but its contents deadly precise. And I opened the feed. Scepter was ready to speak. Want a demo? I asked. You all love demos, right? They leaned in, suddenly quiet. I logged into a secure terminal and projected Scepter's verification protocol. Lines of code cascaded down the screen. Cryptographic hashes, timestamps, authentication logs, all converging on a single undeniable truth. I built this. 5 years, 2 months, 19 days. Every iteration. Every sleepless night fueled by coffee and defiance. Every breakthrough no one ever noticed. It was all mine. I kept my voice calm, though my pulse pounded. That's how long I spent building Scepter. While Nolan Pierce and his polished pitchmen dazzled conferences, I stayed up rewriting firewalls and modeling threat response trees. From the side porch, Aunt Miriam, Grant, and Paige's mother clutched her phone and gasped aloud. Analytics under federal investigation for AI IP theft. But they fired you. Drew stuttered, all his startup swagger gone. Doesn't that mean they owned everything? I turned my laptop toward him and clicked a tab. No, I said, pulling up an email thread. Nolan Pierce's breezy approval to run prototypes on their sandbox environment. Dated, digitally signed, time stamped. The Scepter wasn't theirs. It never was. I built it outside of work hours, on my own gear. They only touched it because I asked. And Nolan gave me written consent. The moment they sold it, without credit or attribution, they triggered the watchdog, a background process that logged everything and waited for its moment. Grant leaned closer, his smirk long gone. So that defense deal, built on stolen code, I said. Nolan sold what he didn't write. Didn't understand. And now? I held up my phone. It was still buzzing, and the reckoning had just begun. Incoming call, Nolan Pierce. I declined. But that's not even the best part, I said, tapping once more. A window opened, a folder labeled legal documentation. Inside were 17 patent certificates, each officially registered under my name, protecting every core component of Scepter. Paige's real estate confidence wavered, but Aunt Miriam, once a high-powered corporate attorney, leaned in, her legal instincts suddenly on high alert. Wait, you're saying Syndrolytics doesn't own any of it? She asked. I nodded. Every machine learning loop, every adaptive firewall, every neural defense node they tried to pitch to the Department of Defense, it's all mine. And thanks to Nolan's arrogance and the digital trail he left behind, proving theft is now just paperwork? Drew was still scrolling his phone furiously, lips parting in disbelief. Dude, their stock's going to crater when markets open. Most likely, I said, calmly sipping my drink. Turns out, misappropriating proprietary code isn't exactly investor-friendly. More phones buzzed. The whispers got sharper. A few relatives walked away, pretending not to be watching, But the truth was spreading, and no one could outrun it. "Why'd you wait?" Grant asked, quieter now. "Why not stop them before they fired you?" I thought of the developers erased from launch decks, the coders who never made it into funding announcements. "Because," I said, voice steady, "some stories need an audience, and justice is louder when it's undeniable." My phone buzzed again. New message preview, Sarah Martinez, CEO, Oracle. Subject, Sepper. "Brilliant. Integrity protocol. Can we discuss this over dinner next week?" I turned the screen toward them. "Looks like Charleston's not the only place paying attention," I said, smiling. If you've been quietly rooting for the underdog, don't miss what comes next. Hit subscribe and follow Julian's journey as the world finally hears the voice behind the code. The sun dipped behind the wrought iron trellises in my aunt's manicured garden, casting long gold streaks across the patio. Charleston's evening air was still and heavy with realization, and somewhere downtown, inside Syndralytic's corporate tower, Nolan Pierce was likely staring into the unraveling of his empire, wondering how a forgotten engineer managed to flip the entire narrative. Tomorrow would bring headlines, legal notices, congressional requests. But tonight belonged to truth. I stood beneath the soft amber hue of hanging lanterns, watching as my family's expressions cracked, one by one. The shift was subtle at first, a crease in the brow, a frozen sip. Then came the full collapse, realization spreading like wildfire. Real value doesn't come from panel invites or startup buzzwords. It comes from long nights, quiet defiance. From the ones they all overlooked. Sometimes the most powerful statement isn't noise, it's timing. Grant's phone rang, probably one of his shaken investors. Paige was frantically texting someone, no doubt trying to spin the fallout. Drew? He just stood there, slack-jawed, the illusion of startup glamour shattering at his feet. I checked my watch. 7:30 p.m. Scepter had done what I designed it to do. The truth was out, and across Charleston's skyline, an expensive lesson about underestimating builders, the ones who stay silent until it matters, had officially begun. 1 month later, I sat in Oracle's boardroom in Redwood Shores. Sarah Martinez, poised and articulate, stood at the front of the room. Behind her, Scepter ran live, monitoring Oracle's systems, dismantling cyber threats before they could form. "In just 4 weeks," Sarah said, "Scepter has neutralized over 3,200 threats, adapted to 19 new attack vectors, and reduced our response window by 87%. And this was only the beginning." The room, once cool with skepticism, was now leaning forward with interest. "You developed this entirely on your own?" one board member asked, eyes narrowing with curiosity. I nodded. "Nights, weekends, my hardware, my funding. Not a single line of code belongs to Syndralytics." I tapped a few keys and pulled up the signed email chain from Nolan Pierce. They only gave me access to test servers, and that came with written IP protections, all documented. There was a moment of stillness. Then respect, not polite or performative, but earned, settled across the room. This was the same test environment where I'd perfected Scepter's authentication core, the very sequence that exposed Nolan's quiet theft to the world. "Well then," Sarah Martinez said with a confident smile, looking across the Oracle boardroom, "I believe we're all in agreement. Let's make it official." The board vote was swift, unanimous. That evening, the headlines lit up. Oracle acquires exclusive rights to Scepter for $4,200,000,000 0 cents. And me? I was stepping into the role of Chief Technology Officer, overseeing a global deployment of the very system they once dismissed as over-engineered. My phone had been buzzing non-stop since the truth went public. Tech journalists requested interviews, panels asked for keynote speeches, government agencies wanted testimony on IP ethics in AI development. But the messages I treasured most came from developers. Hundreds of them. Those stories of erased names, unpaid overtime, and stolen breakthroughs. Scepter wasn't just software anymore. It was a flag in the ground, a movement reclaiming space for builders. As I stepped out of Oracle's glass tower into the fading California sun, my phone buzzed again. I paused. Familiar number. "Hey Grant," I answered. His voice was low, strained. "Julian, I need your help." Since the collapse of Syndrolytics, Grant's venture firm had been under siege. Investors were fleeing, portfolio companies were folding, developers were walking out in protest. "They're leaving," he admitted. "My engineers, my backers, everything." I didn't get it. Didn't get what? "The real innovation doesn't come from hype," he said. "It comes from actually building something, from respecting the people who do." I thought of the anonymous messages I'd received. Engineers locked behind NDAs, stripped of credit, resigned to silence, until Scepter spoke for them. I let out a quiet breath and nodded. "Send me their names," I said. "Oracle's scaling fast. We're hiring people who know what it means to write something real and protect it." Later that night, I drove past Syndrolytics' shuttered campus. The lights were dim, the lobby sign had been taken down, legal filings were stacking up. The building felt hollow, like a monument to arrogance undone. Under a street lamp in the parking lot, someone waved. "Mr. Cross," a voice called out. It was Leo Tran, a junior developer who had quietly stood by me through the chaos. Or should I say, Mr. CTO? I smiled. "Julian's fine." "And you?" I asked. "Honestly," Leo said, grinning, "never better." After Scepter exposed everything, a bunch of us started talking. We're documenting it all, every stolen repo, every buried line of code. He held up his phone, revealing a sleek new site. A network. A ledger. A truth. Made permanent. "We're calling it the Scepter Pact," Leo said proudly. "It's a framework for protecting developer rights. Think of it as open source armor, built to guard against corporate theft." I stared at the screen in his hand, stunned. What had started in the quiet corners of my apartment in Charleston had become a global statement. "Send me the link," I said. "Oracle's new ethics council might want to support it." Just then, my phone buzzed again. New message. From Jessica Whitmore. Since the Syndrolytics fallout, Google had launched an internal audit on code attribution. Jessica, once the golden legal strategist, had been quietly suspended, pending review of multiple misrepresented contracts. But this silence felt different. Not like a void. Like closure, like justice finally catching up. For the first time in years, I smiled. Fully. Her message read, "I get it now. Why you stayed with the code instead of chasing titles. Real power doesn't come from owning the room. It comes from building something that outlives it." I leaned back in my chair, eyes settling on the dented old laptop where Scepter had first come alive. Now it monitored global networks, repelled daily cyber attacks, and protected institutions that once ignored developers like me. But that wasn't the real legacy. The true impact was the shift it sparked. New IP standards, enforced attribution policies, and a worldwide movement that finally asked, who actually built the future? Another buzz. A message from Drew, the cousin who once laughed by the koi pond. And everything had come full circle. "Signed up for a coding boot camp, starting next week," Drew's message read. "Think you'd mentor me? I want to learn how to build something real." I smiled. I'd walked the long, quiet road from overlooked developer to global CTO, and I knew exactly where he needed to start. Lesson 1, I typed back. Success isn't about who talks the loudest. It's about who puts in the work and protects what they build. Outside, the lights of the bay shimmered, casting long reflections across the Oracle campus courtyard. Tomorrow, I'd step into my first full day as Oracle's Chief Technology Officer. Next week, I'd appear before Congress to testify on developer ownership rights and innovation ethics, a conversation long overdue. Tonight, I opened a new file. The blank, untouched, waiting. A fresh challenge, a new solution, another chance to build something that mattered. Because real power in tech doesn't come from applause or press releases. It doesn't live in funding rounds or panel stages. It comes from the builders. The ones who stay late. Who rewrite until it works. who solve problems no one else wants to face. The ones who write quietly but leave behind something that lasts. Every function, every loop, every line, it all tells a story. And as I placed my fingers on the keyboard, ready to begin again, I smiled once more, because I knew exactly how this one would start. If you've made it this far, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment, not just for me, but for every builder who's ever been overlooked, dismissed, or told to stay quiet. Tell me what you would have done. Share your story. And if there's one thing I hope you take from mine, it's this: protect what you create. In a world obsessed with noise, real value still comes from the quiet work. If you believe that too, subscribe, follow, and let's keep building a future where creators finally get the credit they deserve.